Hello and welcome to News 24. We are, of course, discussing the big news story of the day, the recall by the ANC of President Jacob Zuma and a possible resignation. Joining me today is Lawson Naidoo from the Centre for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. Lawson, big day in South African history, actually. We are sitting on tenterhooks to hear from the presidency on a possible statement from the president on his future. Still no confirmation. There was talk that there would be a statement at 10 this morning, but then that was postponed again. Still no confirmation yet.
Yeah, well, I think we've become accustomed to these postponements over the last few weeks. The postponement of SONA, postponement of various NEC meetings, and now the postponement of the president's press conference this morning. So what we do know is that the NEC has taken a decision to recall the president. That's conveyed to us yesterday quite clearly by the ANC Secretary General Makashule, and we're now waiting for the president's response to that. So is he going to voluntarily resign and step down, or is he going to force the ANC to go to Parliament and pass a motion of no confidence in him?
Of course, there's nothing in the Constitution that now forces the president to resign, but is he legally bound by the ANC's Constitution?
Well, he's bound as a member of the ANC and subject to the discipline of the ANC to say, I respect the leadership of the ANC, I respect the decision of the National Executive Committee, which, as we know, is the highest decision-making body of the ANC between conferences. And that's a very strong statement that came out there. So one would expect that President Zuma, as a long-standing member of the ANC, would respect that decision and do as he has been asked to do.
And he's always said that he would respect the decision of the NEC should they recall him.
Indeed, and I think what we're seeing now is a little bit of manoeuvring in terms of a timing of the resignation, or the timing of him stepping down, and whether the request that he's made, we heard suggestions that he's asking for 3 months. Obviously that was not acceptable to the ANC. They want that to happen much more quickly. So it's exactly how much time does he get, and will that satisfy the ANC, or will they suddenly decide, well, we can't live with that and we're going to go to Parliament and recall you?
Then also Makashule saying at the media briefing yesterday that they're not recalling him because he did anything wrong, but rather in favor of ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa taking over and managing this transition smoothly.
Well, I think that's really just a message to try and sort of keep the semblance of unity within the ANC intact. We know there's a litany of reasons why President Zuma should step down. Many of us in civil society have been articulating those reasons for a long period of time now. His involvement in state capture, his disrespect for the Constitution, the way in which he's mismanaged South Africa in the 9 years that he's been president. So I think there are many, many reasons, and if the ANC is not prepared to list them, I think South Africans can make up their own minds about those reasons. So, but I think certainly what the ANC was trying to do yesterday was to say, this is about the future. We want to move forward now. They've elected a new president in Cyril Ramaphosa in December, and they want him to assume office as quickly as possible.
Of course, all of this is taking place while there's a raid happening at the Gupta compound in Saxonwold this morning. We've heard from the Hawks that 3 people have been arrested and 2 more are supposedly giving themselves over to the Hawks later today. Is this a coincidence that this happened on the day that President Zuma is expected to resign?
Well, whether it's a coincidence or not, I think it's one would say rather late than never. I mean, they've had, from the time that the Public Protector's report was published in November 2016, there was a basis for them to take the Guptas in for questioning at the very least. The various Gupta leaks emails that came out last year, as well as all the evidence that journalists have put in the public domain, means this should have happened a long time ago. We welcome the fact that it's happened now, and hopefully the law will take its course and they will, justice will be administered.
Well, President Zuma's son, Duduzane Zuma, is obviously also implicated in these developments. We know that he's in business with the Guptas. He said publicly that they have a good relationship. How does this affect President Zuma going forward now, especially if he relinquishes executive power?
Well, I think what we've seen over the years is the way President Zuma has utilized state institutions, the Hawks, the NPA, and so on, to prevent action being taken against him, against his son, against the Guptas and their associates. And I think, you know, this is part of the crisis that we face at the moment, is that President Zuma is fearful of stepping down, because once he does that, once he steps down, he ceases to have control over these institutions, and they run the risk of being arrested, as people have been arrested already this morning. And I think that's hopefully a sign of things to come.
Right, so we're still waiting for the resignation, and in the meantime, the EFF has let us know that they have withdrawn their court application for their motion of no confidence to be moved forward. After they said, you know, talking to the ANC caucus, this means that the caucus gave them some sort of an assurance, you know, that they would either support their motion or bring their own motions should President Zuma not resign?
Well, I think it's good that there are discussions within Parliament. I mean, personally, I don't think that the EFF would have been successful in court. I think the courts would be very reluctant to tell Parliament when to schedule a debate, especially that Parliament took a decision to do so and had set a date of the 22nd of February. I think the issue now is about the timing of it, and I think there's broad recognition now amongst parties that it needs to be brought forward. And if the ANC and the EFF can reach an agreement in terms of when that happens and how the motion actually gets tabled, because obviously one of the issues for the ANC is that they don't want to be seen to be supporting an opposition motion. So can they work together in some way to cobble together a unified approach to that? Absolutely.
Then lastly, the NPA will decide in the next 10 days whether they go ahead with the prosecution of President Jacob Zuma. Is he a worried man right now?
I think he should be a very worried man, and I think he's been a very worried man since October last year, when the Supreme Court made its judgment in the spy tapes matter to say that the decision to drop the charges was irrational. The President has now played his hand in terms of making representations to the NPA, and we know yesterday that Advocate Abrams has said that his internal panel, who are reviewing the President's representations, must give him a recommendation by the end of next week, I think. And Shaun Abrams has given an undertaking to us as CASAC that he will provide us with 2 weeks' notice before he takes a decision, so that we may take appropriate legal action in that regard. We do not think that Abrams is the correct person to take such a decision. He has been complicit in much of Jacob Zuma's legal processes. He's been criticized by the courts for siding with President Zuma. So we don't think that he's the right person to do so, and we're hoping that a new National Director of Public Prosecutions will be appointed soon enough to be able to take that decision that will then have the confidence of the South African public.
Well, with everything we've seen happening in the past week or so, certainly new ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa asserting some control. We've already seen earlier in January him cleaning up the leadership of the Eskom board, of Eskom itself. So we can only hope that he would do the same at the National Prosecuting Authority.
Well, I think there are lots of things that will be on President-elect, if I may call him that, Ramaphosa's to-do list. Cleaning up the NPA, SARS, the Hawks, the intelligence services. There are a lot of things that are priorities for him, and I think he's acted on Eskom and will need to deal with other state-owned companies and so on. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done, and I think South Africans need to be realistic in terms of what a new administration under Cyril Ramaphosa will be able to deliver within particular timeframes. They'll have to prioritize the issues that need to be dealt with. But I think restoring confidence of South Africans in our democracy is one of those priorities, as well as seeking to reassure the international investor community that South Africa is, as Ramaphosa said at Davos, open for business.
Well, we will certainly stay with the story, which is the recall and possible resignation of President Jacob Zuma. Stay up to date on all the latest developments on News 24.